Johnnie, Nevada by Ghost Town Wonders.
Good morning. Today I'm going to head out to a mining district known as Johnnie. Johnnie had at least two successful mine sites. One is Johnnie and the other was called Congress Mine. We're going to go out and take a look at those today. It's only about 70 miles north and west of Las Vegas, Nevada, near the existing town of Pahrump. So I'm going to go out and spend a day, take some videos, and report back to you guys. I'm getting ready to get on the road with a trusty cup of coffee. Let's go explore.
I wanted to bring you to Ash Meadow. This is where the story begins of the Johnnie Mining District. Ash Meadows lies in a remote southwest corner of Nevada in Nye County, some 90 miles west of Las Vegas. Ash Meadows is a true oasis in Nevada's Amargosa Desert, located in one of the hottest and driest regions of North America. 50 odd springs and seeps at Ash Meadows together discharge almost 11,000 gallons of water per minute, making it the largest remaining oasis in the Mojave Desert. There's a general consensus that the water source has traveled underground over large distances before it emerges at the springs. It is a major discharge point for more than 600 square mile regional aquifer underlying southwest Nevada. Groundwater flow between basins of the Great Basin is a conceptual idea which has been discussed and tested by many studies over the past 100 years. It was first suggested by a man by the name of Mendenhall in 1909, who was interested in locating springs in the Southwest Great Basin for use by mining prospectors and railroads. Ancestors of the western Shoshone and southern Paiute were likely the first humans to settle in this area, engaging in small scale farming. They remain tied to this area today. Okay, enough about Ash Meadows. Let's move on to the legend. Starts out joining thousands of 49ers rushing into California were brothers Charles and Joshua Breyfogle. Hailing from Lockhart, New York, the pair headed west with a train of saddle and draft horses and two wagons in the spring of 1849. They soon teamed up with other pioneers in Columbus, Ohio, and continued their long journey to the California goldfields. They finally reached Sacramento in August of 1849. About a month later, the Breyfogles began searching for their fortunes in promising areas of rivers nearby in Sacramento. Having no success, they moved on to other areas northern side of California. By December of 1850, Charles Breyfogle returned to New York with some $20,000, leaving his brother Joshua to work the claims of California. Following new silver strikes in Nevada, Charles Breyfogle went to Virginia City, where the buzz was all about the new finds near Austin, Nevada in 1862. More stories were circulating about gold in the Big Smoky Valley. In 1863, he heard three men at a hotel discussing crude map. Sure that they were discussing the legendary lost gunsight mine of Death Valley, he decided to follow them when they left the next day. Trailing them across Nevada, he caught up with them between Tonopah and Goldfield. He was surprised to find that the men were not looking for the lost gunsight lode, but rather were on their way to Texas to join the Confederate Army. The men were on their way to join a wagon train on the Los Angeles Trail, and Breyfogle decided to ride with them for a couple of days. 3 days later, the men were encamped south of the area known as Ash Meadows in the Mojave Desert's Amargosa River Valley. Laying his bedroll out apart from the others, he awoke in the middle of the night to see Indians attacking the other three men. Grabbing his bedroll and boots, he fled out into the darkness. Without provisions or weapons, he wandered in the desert for several days until he finally found a spring. Resting there, he found gold in a deposit of quartz and took with him several samples, vying to return if he could ever find his way out of the desert. Heading south, he eventually came upon wagon tracks which he followed to Stump Spring in the Pahrump Valley in Nevada's western Mojave Desert. Deciding to wait at the springs for a wagon train to show up, he was instead found by Indians first. Taking him captive, they worked him as a slave for months. Finally, a Mormon wagon train came upon the Indian village and freed him with a ransom. Taking him to a ranch at Muncie Springs in southern Nevada, he was cared for by the wife's owner, Mrs. Yount. After Breyfogle had fully recovered, he settled in Austin, Nevada, where he would organize search parties for the next 26 years, concentrating on the regions northeast of Death Valley. The men would search in vain and never finding the lost outcropping. But Breyfogle never stopped looking, becoming so obsessed with the search that he once said, "I shall come back a rich man or leave my bones in Death Valley." Yeah, this view right here is from Ash Meadows. Looking out to the east, you can see the mountain ranges way out in the back, the Spring Mountains. That's supposedly where he wandered off to, and that's the general area where the Johnnie Mining District is. We'll discover that and look at that in more detail. Gold was discovered in this area in 1890. The Johnnie Mining District was formed in 1891, consisted of two mines, the Congress Mine and the Johnnie Mine. The first camp was named Montgomery after the brothers in the Discovery Party. A U.S. post office was opened in August of 1891 and remained open until March of 1894. This exhibit that you see here is a platted map showing the town site of Johnnie and the mining claims within the Johnnie District. From what I can see, it was created by a man by the name of James Sterling in 1908. This is an overview of the area, what it looks like today. This is from Google Maps, overlaying the town sites and the important mines that were there, and also showing the sources of water in the Grapevine Springs and Horseshoe Springs. This is a blow up of the Johnnie town site, the platted map that you saw earlier. And it basically shows the platted town site, and you can see there was a post office mapped out as well. The area shown behind me is what Johnnie looks like today. There's no old buildings that were left. These are just newer modern buildings and shacks, and with a few people living there. The town site of Johnnie was platted in May of 1905 between two mines, the Johnnie and a few miles to the northeast, and the Congress nearby to the west. The town had cold water, fire hydrants, and tree-lined streets. A pipeline was run from Horseshoe Springs, 4 miles to the east, from where donkeys had hauled water in the early days. A post office was opened in August of 1891. A few years later, however, only the Congress mine was active, and the post office closed in March of 1894. When a new mill was built for the Congress mine in September of 1895, it employed 70 men and revived the camp briefly before it emptied out. The Congress mine was sold in 1898, and about 50 men were back. But due to unresolved labor disputes, the operations were quickly shut down again. Still, it was not the end of Johnnie. When several new discoveries were made in 1905, the Congress mine was again reopened and a number of new claims were staked. Just 2 years later, the camp boasted a population of about 350 people, several stores, saloons, hotels, and restaurants. By 1914, the boom was over and the population dropped to less than 15 people. Just 2 years later, another discovery started Johnnie up again. The Eureka Johnnie Mining Company began operations in 21 and continued until 1925. But Johnnie did not die. There was still enough gold in the area for prospectors to keep working. However, the post office closed again in November of 1935. There are three important mines in this area. One mine called Congress, the other called Labbe, and the last one called Johnnie. We'll go look at these individually, starting with the Congress mine. In 1890, brothers George and Robert Montgomery were seeking the lost Breyfogle mine of earlier legends. The two hired a local Paiute named Indian Johnny to lead the expedition. He showed them a spot with a few veins of gold. They were somewhat disappointed with the limited amount. No problem, Johnny says, and he led them 4 miles to the south where they witnessed visible nuggets in the rocks. They called the place Chispas, which was later renamed the Congress Mine by Jimmy Butler and Harry Ramsey in 1904. This area right here is Congress Mine. That peak out there is called Montgomery Peak. They say that's where they could see the gold out on the surface. Most of the workings in the district follow massive, prominent white quartz veins, some of which range up to 3 feet wide and are traceable for long distances on the surface. Hey, here's where the fun begins. Let's take the truck and follow those roads up there and climb around and see what's going on.
Notice I'm hugging the left side of the road because it's a big drop off to the right. Never good when you can't see the road over the top of your hood. It's quite unnerving. So this is the road back to Congress Mine, in case anybody gets an idea that this is where they want to go. Be prepared. Narrow road, especially in a full-size truck. Again, this road is probably more suitable for a side-by-side or a Jeep. Something smaller than a truck. But it's an adventure.
This is an ore hopper that I found near the Congress Mine site area. And just to give you an idea what the Congress Mine site area looks like, it's mostly a series of shafts, adits, surface workings, and it follows at least a mile long outcropping quartz vein you can see on the surface. And this is a 3-chute hopper where they probably gathered all the ore from the surrounding mines and or the surrounding shafts and dumped the ore into what was probably a truck at that time, because I didn't see any evidences of a rail. So you can see they probably parked underneath there and let that chute fill up the truck bed, and then probably got hauled off to a mill site somewhere. According to a mining report and survey, the Congress Mine was originally known as Chespas and was discovered about the same time as the Johnnie Mine, about 1890. The property consists of 6 unpatented lode claims and is situated in the Montgomery Mountains near the old town of Johnnie. According to Mr. Charles Labbe, who was the mine operator and manager at the time, Congress Mine was worked continuously from 1890 to 1895, when the lessees and the owners had some trouble. It was reported that 2 men were killed, resulting retaliation. A 10-stamp mill and cookhouse was burned, and the office was dynamited. It appears most of the work of this property was done by lessees. No production figures are available, but several thousand tons of tailings are evidence by the milling. A rather new small head frame with ore bin and hoist house with a small hoist indicated that some work had been done in the last 10 years. Mr. Labbe stated that most of the activity was during the 1890 and 95 period. The workings consist of 2 incline shafts of 160 and 250 feet in depth, with about 1,500 foot of laterals and many surface cuts and trenches. Another very important mine in this area was known as Labbe Mine. It was owned by a man by the name of Charles Labbe of Las Vegas, Nevada at the time. It adjoins the Johnnie Mine on the southwest and consists of 4 patent and 3 unpatented claims. Water is piped to the camp and mill from a spring to the east. A 10-stamp amalgamation mill on the property is very well built, with all steel and concrete construction, and appears to be in excellent condition. A large steel water tank above the mine, mill, and camp is used as a reserve to augment the pipeline supply. Mine workings consist of several shafts, the deepest of which is 250 feet, with a few adits. There being about 2,000 feet total workings. The main shaft has a steel head frame and hoist house in very good condition. Again, that was a mining report from about 1940. I didn't see any evidence of head frames or hoist. Of course, a lot of that stuff they get torn down and resold to other mine operations. This is what the Labbe site looks like today. You can see some older buildings. There's actually looks like somebody's living up there at the moment. I ran across this old shack. It looks like a miner shack while I was up there. This is on the Labbe property. I ran across an old boy who told me that he's familiar with this area pretty much, and he tells me that this cabin is probably at least 100 years old. Wanted to point out this water line looked like he had running water into this cabin. We're going to go take a look at one of the most important mine sites and the highest producing mine in the entire area. It's called Johnnie. This is an old picture of Johnnie Mine. Shows the amalgamation mill and then the head frame. This is what the head frame and the amalgamation mill looks like today. Couldn't get too close to it because it's private property. According to a report written by Mr. Labbe in about 1940, the Johnnie Mine was discovered in 1890 and over $1 million produced during 1910 to 1913. Mr. Labbe, by the way, was a mining manager at that time. The mine consists of 10 patented and several unpatented claims. It is opened by a 45-degree incline 900-foot shaft. Mr. Labbe states that he was on the 900-foot level back in 1938 and estimated a large tonnage of mill or above this level. The 400-foot level was examined by mining inspectors and the ladders were in good shape to this point. The ruins of what is reported to have been an 85-ton amalgamation mill are adjacent to the shaft. Records indicate that only minor work has been done at the Johnnie Mine since 1926. The Overview Mine, formerly known as Crown Point Globe, is southwest of and adjoins the Johnnie Mine. The property is owned by the Overland Mining Company of Chicago. In 1907, it mentions that the mine as having a 210-foot shaft and 1,000 foot of laterals at that time. In 1909, ore from here was treated in a one-stamp mill. Although no mention of the mine is made since 1909, considerable work has apparently been done by lessees. Several sheet iron buildings on the property are in various stages of disrepair, and the head frame with built-in ore bin at the incline shaft is in fair condition. Some milling has been done since the early days as the ruins of an Ellis mill, and a small tailing pile are still evident. If you look closely to the lower right-hand side of the opening, you can see two pipelines. One looks like it's water and the other looks like it's air. I suspect that this old Ingersoll Rand compressor was what provided air down to the mine shaft. Gives you an idea how long they have been around. As traditional mining in this district became unprofitable and started to wane, there were many years of inactivity. However, there was a renewed interest in placer mining around the 1930s. Placer mining in Nevada basically came in during three periods. The 1860s to 1880s, when many small deposits throughout the state were discovered and sporadically worked, when several large placers were discovered and extensively worked in a short period between 1906 and 1910, when very rich placers were discovered throughout the state. And then also in the early 1930s, when economic conditions created by the Depression caused a renewed interest. The first recorded production of placer gold from the Johnnie District occurred in 1918, but the more productive accumulations of placer gold were discovered in 1920. This later discovery created a considerable excitement and led to a short boom. A small amount of placer gold was produced almost yearly until 1950 and sporadically until 1960. Most of the placer gold was recovered by dry washing the gravels. In 1949, a hillside below the Johnnie mine was mined by sluicing with water under high pressure. The amount of gold recovered by this technique did not differ much from the amount recovered by dry washing techniques. Most all of the placer mining in this area was done by dry washing due to lack of water. You can see the scars in these photos that we've taken above that indicate where they've scraped the surface of the hillside. And from what I understand, it's only anywhere from 8 inches to a foot in depth, and they just dry washed it, which was a very slow, painstaking process that they used to try to mine the gold. In the early days of the Johnnie Mining District, around the turn of the century, around 1890s and 1900s, this is how most of the freight was taken in and also exported out. Most of these mule trains ended up in a supply station known as Daggett, California, which is about 130 miles south and east. There was never a rail system built to the Johnnie area. Did never warrant it. There was a rail system that was built between Las Vegas and Beatty, and you used to be able to get a ride up into the junction about 15 miles away from the area of Johnnie to catch a passenger train, but usually not freight. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I truly had a great time exploring the area and spent a lot of time doing the research. It was most enjoyable. I learned a lot. Thanks again.